Right. We're getting sacked in the morning. The stresses of soccer management.
Tom, it's our first show. Is there no time left to sort of try and develop a show anymore?
No, there isn't. It's full on just misery. We love the misery here. But for a manager in the current scene of soccer in Clare, there must be pressure involved. And I think this week we should talk to a few managers to get this show on the road.
I think we should, but first of all, we should sort of welcome our listeners in and introduce the concept of the show. So why don't you sort of tell people what we're about?
We're about speaking football at a local level, specifically East Clare, and we're going to talk about the men this week, and next month we're going to talk about ladies football, and we're going to get a little bit of gossip, and really we're going to take it from there, because there's a lot to be gained about knowing local knowledge and tuning into your local radio station.
Exactly, and you're listening to Scariff Bay Community Radio. This is a show of 90 minutes, we'll say the Clare football show, which hopefully will be a monthly staple on the radio airwaves of East Clare, and will also be available for download on podcasts shortly after its broadcast. So basically, we're going to be covering I suppose the majority of our coverage is going to be geared towards our clubs in East Clare. So we're talking Mountshannon Celtic, we're talking Kilkishen, and we're talking Tulla. And today, Tom, we're going to be talking to someone from all of them, all the managers. I hope they're not going to be under pressure after that intro music from you.
Well, it's like everything, you got to begin where you hope to go. Or is that the wrong saying? Not the, what do you call it? It's not start where you hope to finish. Is that what it is? There's that one of those wonderful sayings, but then again...
You're just thinking of Donald Trump now. This is a soccer show, it's not politics.
Do you know what? Considering the month that's in it, make Halloween great again.
Fair enough. Will we start the show?
We will. Let's kick it off.
Now, Tom, first show, first guest.
Delighted to welcome Mike Moloney, manager of Tulla United Premier side. Last season in the Premier, survival a bit like Bear Grylls?
Yeah, I suppose very young group of players. We hadn't been in the Premier for a few years, and it was really about giving players experience, the pace of it, the physicality of it. And it took a period of time, probably up until Christmas, for the lads to begin to adapt. And then there was a little bit of a break at Christmas. We had a chance to circle the wagons, and we were really competitive for the rest of the season. We stayed up, albeit in a playoff at the end of the season with Cool, and got to a cup semi-final that we lost on penalties. So I suppose all in all, it probably exceeded our expectations a little bit. But yeah, it was a learning curve for the lads that hopefully that experience now bringing it into this season will mean that we'll be more competitive than we were last.
And tell me, when it comes to getting players up to speed, it's a very difficult thing to do when you have players that are coming in new, fresh, that haven't got an awful lot of experience, especially at that level. Is it all about the coaching and repetitions and as much soccer as you possibly can get in the kind of the off-season or pre-season?
Well, look, we've got a very young group of players, but they're not inexperienced. So they might be inexperienced at playing adult level in Clare, but they've all played underage for us for, 8 or 10 years. And we've had a couple of very successful squads. Our 2003 born and 2005 born players have both had good runs in national cups, and a lot of them have played underage for Clare. They played in the county grounds more often than I have. They've played in Eamon DC Park. That kind of experience. And so I suppose even though there's that look of them of being very callow, when push comes to shove, they have a lot of experience from playing. All they need really was being able to step up to, I suppose, the physicality and the speed of the game that they wouldn't have been used to. But in terms of experience underage, they had great experience. And now that they have that season under their belt, there should be progress.
And I mean, from back in the days when we were playing, I mean, has the kind of the psychology changed with regards to the player coming into a weekend, let's say the mental preparation, is he going out, let's say, a bit like Sam Allardyce having to trawl the pubs in Limerick looking for his players on a Saturday night for a Sunday match? Is there an element of that with the younger player compared to the older, or is there a bit more smarts going on?
No, I think they're much more mature probably than I was at their age. I think they realise that preparation is important. And I suppose everything has changed. The quality of the pitches that they play on now, the quality of our own pitch, the quality of the pitch in a market, or the quality of the pitch in Avenue, or, most of the teams now. And that whole thing feeds into a better level of preparation for the players. You're more likely now to see a young fella walking around with a 2-litre bottle of water than you are with a flagon of cider that he might have been doing back 30 years ago. And they realise that their diet is important. We've introduced strength and conditioning for them as well, because obviously if lads are going to be resilient and able to avoid injury, they need to be that little bit stronger. So, I think we have a group of lads now that are mature enough that they realise that if they go out on a Saturday night and if they weren't to prepare properly, they wouldn't be able to compete at all on a Sunday morning.
I'm just kind of thinking to myself, Luke, who has a bit of knowledge and experience with treaty back in the day as well. The game has changed, and when it comes to the Premier League, as much as it is in England with Man City and everyone trying to catch their standard, has the same happened in the Clare League?
Yeah, I suppose, Newmarket had a very successful season last season, but I'm not so sure that boat is going to lift all the others. I think that was a great season for Newmarket. It doesn't necessarily mean that the standard in Clare soccer is higher as a result of that, but it has set the bar, and I think we all know now that if we want to compete with those teams, we need to prepare better, and we need to be doing those things, in terms of strength and conditioning, in terms of pre-season, in terms of going into a season having played 4 or 5 or 6 games, to be able to compete with those two clubs in particular, Avenue and Newmarket. But that's happening. It's happening in Tulla, it's happening in the Bridge, it's happening in Shannon. And, I think we'll see that. But yeah, it's a challenge to compete with Avenue and Newmarket, and they have dominated the game over the last 10 or 12 seasons. The results don't lie, the trophies don't lie, but certainly it's our ambition to be competing with them over the coming seasons.
Yeah, and Mike, can I sort of bring us back a little bit now, because you're wearing a nice top there in front of you, and you have founded 1970 on you, and sort of for soccer fans, football fans in East Clare, I make no apologies for saying that what ye have done in the midst of East Clare is very much to be admired. And as I said, I have great admiration for everything that you've been able to do in relation to the club, the facilities that you've developed. And, I know at various stages, there are ebbs and flows, and there are challenges, we'll say, especially over this side of the county, because you have other codes, and, you have the hurling Tulla sort of trying to get back senior, and I'm sure there's a little bit of to-ing and fro-ing with that. But just, Thomas alluded to sort of thinking the lads would be out on the lash the night before a game or two. I think those days are gone, and I also think that the lads' sort of allegiances are maybe not as strong from the point of view of I'm playing hurling and that's it. It's a bit like, well, I like soccer as well, so I'll play soccer as well, and don't you be telling me what to do, and that's not aimed at Tulla. I think that's just in general, I think, the way that things have gone. But ye have had an underage structure that you've brought up over the years, and one of the things that I would imagine that has helped that and is going to be feeding into you, hopefully many years of success for you down the line, is the AstroTurf, and the amount of youngsters that has probably attracted to you. And I know for a few years, we'll say, you weren't in the Premier, you were down, you had only one senior team, but you were still digging away at underage, and you're now back in the position where you've a B team and you're back in the Premier and trying to re-establish yourselves there. Can you just sort of explain the advantages of having the B team and what potential benefits you see coming from that in the future?
Yeah, I suppose just to go back to the facilities part of it for a minute. I suppose no more than the majority of clubs, we were nomads for years, moving from one farmer's field to the next farmer's field, never sure from one season to the next where we might be playing. And then we purchased a field on the 1st of January, or we went to see a field on the 1st of January 2004 and purchased it later that year, and developed it and opened it in 2008, and then the AstroTurf followed in 2011. And there's been huge drivers in the club, you know, Dennis Corrie, Mike Hoy, Stephen Brady, Barry Murphy, more probably than I could name. And it's been piece by piece. You know, there are no quick fixes to not having anything of your own. You know, you have to go and buy something, you have to get grants, you have to spend money. And now we're seeing the benefit of those developments that have taken place.
It's 20 years since you first went to go buy a pitch. It's sort of 16 years since it first opened. It's 10, 11, 12 years since the Astro opened.
Yeah.
But it's now that's coming to fruition.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. And I suppose the advantage that having good pitches of your own means you can play in a particular way. You know, so you can play very constructive football because you've got 2 carpets of pitches. In terms of the Astro, it allows you to play 12 months of the year.
Yeah.
So that time when you would have to take off a period of time over the winter, or you'd be trying to bring lads out up to their ankles in muck, or, you know,
which wasn't helping anyone.
No,
you know, be
exactly.
realistic about it. We were used to it. You know, so that's how we did
and now
it.
Every youngster expects that they're going to have really good facilities, and they expect that they're going to have a really good standard of training because of what the experience they're having at other clubs and in other codes, in hurling and Gaelic football or rugby or wherever they go. And we're competing with that, but in a sense we're not really competing. You know, for me, they complement each other. You know, playing hurling, playing football, playing rugby, playing as many sports as you can, they do really complement each other. And we've had great cooperation from the hurling club, you know, in terms of access to players. And that cooperation is reciprocated, you know, in terms of we giving some leeway and they giving us some leeway. And I suppose the overlap of the seasons means there'll always be a little bit of push and pull. And for us, I suppose, it's trying to develop more players, if we can, whose first priority is playing soccer. In terms of the B team, and that piece was what you asked, I suppose, at the end, is the opportunity for every player that comes out of underage to play it at a standard appropriate to them.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to struggle and maybe play with an A team in a Premier Division or a First Division that they're not quite ready for yet. They get to play in a Third Division with a B team, and then maybe their development comes at a later stage than some of the lads that might be considered more talented, in inverted commas, at 15 or 16 or 13 or 14. Those lads come through, and maybe they're the very players that will turn out to be your A team players in their 20s.
And as we say, you'll have some good squad players from it at the very worst.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll say a few nuggets of lads that could be late developers or late bloomers can come in, no more than any other team or any other code in it. But it's great to have it now, Tom.
Or they might be great committee members.
Yeah.
They might be the one who's going to be a treasurer or a secretary or a fundraiser. You know, there might be that, and like to play their casual game as well, or their less competitive game. Sorry, Tom.
No, I was just going to say it's so important to have an identity and to be a part of something. And the way you spoke about the cooperation between different codes of sports is wonderful. That's the way it should be. In small rural communities in Ireland, you should be able to sit down with your local GA club or your rugby club or God knows tennis club if you're in Killaloe. I mean, it just seems to be the way to progress, because you're using more or less the same players for different codes of sports. So, you know, behind the scenes cooperation is key. Now, Luke mentioned nuggets. I'm going to ask you for 3 key players in your squad. 3 key. And that's not being disrespectful to any other players, but as a manager, you're always going to put 3 players down, or you want 3 or 4 players week in, week out, and you'll build your team, the rest of your team, or you fill up your team sheet around them. Who are your 3 to 4 players?
Yeah, I suppose it's maybe harder to name them than it might be at a club where all the players are so young. So, you know, we've got a lot of young players that have come up together. And a lot of those are really talented players, you know. So these are guys who are only turning 20 this year, or 18 this year, or 19 this year. We've got a very good goalkeeper in Simon Kilker. So, you know, played underage for Clare at youths level, has been with the club all his schoolboy life. And, you know, great lad, just won't turn 18 for another 2 months. but terrific goalkeeper and big strong boy as well.
Unusual name,
Kilker, yeah. His parents aren't local, so they're from a neighbouring parish. They're from Quinn.
Very good. Yeah, no, just knows the name. Okay, yeah. Simon Kilker, who are we on to then?
Jack McSweeney, who is living in the village of Tulla. His mother and father and his two brothers, both all heavily involved in the club over the years. Jack just turned 20 this year. Again, terrific player, midfield player, and a very good one. And then probably, I suppose, Adam McNamara, who, again, very good player, just turning 18 this year, centre back. Again, has played at underage level for Clare, 16s, youths. And then maybe just the fourth one is probably Éanna Calloo, again, local Tulla lad. Really progressed last season and is a real key player for us now. And again, I suppose the Calloos are synonymous with Tulla. Brian Calloo was a teacher back in my day, and his father Brian is the principal teacher in the primary school in Tulla. So excellent. You know, the Calloos go back a long way, and Éanna's a really good one.
And what position does he play again?
He plays out wide left or right.
Okay.
What age is Éanna, Mike?
So Éanna will be Éanna turns 19 this year.
I'm flabbergasted in such a lovely way that you have basically told us 18, 20, 18, 19 is the spine of your team.
Yeah.
All going great down the line. You're set up for years to come if you have a good spine like that.
Well, I suppose the one element that affects every community in Ireland is emigration. And I suppose, as I say, while they're going to college, they're coming back at weekends, or if it's Limerick, they're probably playing and training midweek. But as I said, the temptation to move abroad because of either full employment in Ireland or just to seek your ambition somewhere else, you know, as I said, you might lose half of them by the time 23 comes along, or 24. But the thing is, you have no way of guiding that. That's just the future, depending on what it is. But as Luke says, I mean, it's such a well-structured base for your team to go forward for the next 3 or 4 years. You know, you're going to be challenging for cup competitions and hopefully the league as well.
Yeah, and I suppose I've just named 4 there. I could have named another 4, another 6, or another
absolutely.
8, all around the same, you know, age cohort. Yeah. And I suppose the challenge for us is to keep producing those good young players every year.
Okay.
You know, because every club, whatever sport it is, you can produce that great crop. You know, people will say, you know, the class of 92 for Man United.
Yes.
But are you producing it every year? Are you getting those 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 good players every year? And that's the challenge for the club and our coaches, and the consistency in our coaching, that we're producing those good players all the time. And then for the lads who maybe aren't quite as good as that there's a B team there for them. And look, inevitably, young fellas are going to travel. But thankfully, we're in a time where there's full employment. So if somebody wants to stay, and if they want to get a job in Ireland, there's a great variety of jobs. We're very lucky. Beckman Coulter is on our doorstep in terms of a local employer. And then, as we were saying before we started our chat, we're right in an area in Tulla where we're very close to Ennis, we're very close to Limerick, we're very close to Shannon, we're very close to Galway. So somebody could be based there, and they're literally only 45 minutes of commute up the road to go to Johnson & Johnson, or to go to, into EI and Shannon, or to go, wherever it is. There are employers close by for the most ambitious of lads.
Sure.
And then I suppose, can we build the loyalty for them to stay playing football with us? Because if they do go there to work, the temptation might be to play with one of those clubs closer to them, wherever they will be. And that's where that piece comes in, that loyalty piece.
I think that just looking at what you have, Mike, and you start to say, you've mentioned 4, there's probably another 4 or 5 that are in around the same age group, all the rest of that. To have got to and be competing in the Premier at that age, and they're all, if they're all pretty much in within a year or 2 of each other, I think that's a great way. It's a great reflection of the club, and I think it's, as we alluded to earlier, the pitch, the Astro, and he said those kids are coming up, and they've come up with you over a period of years. It's not as if lads have sort of landed in and said, just I'll go over and have a look and see what Tulla are doing. These are lads you've sort of nurtured all the way up, so it'd be great for you. Can I ask you, without giving all the managerial secrets away, what would you pertain to be the style of play you would like to see your team play?
Yeah, I suppose very much we're about playing out from the back. So, we take risks because I suppose the standard of our pitches is so good.
Yeah.
Half our games are going to be at home. So there's no excuse for us kicking it as far away from the goal, hoping it doesn't come back again for a while. When, you've got an opportunity to put it down and play out and be constructive. Now, there's a price to be paid for that. Anyone who watched the games during the week and watched Oran pass the ball out to the opposition centre forward and he running the ball back into the net. If that happens at a professional level, it's going to happen at a junior soccer level. So you have to accept that young players will make mistakes. But it's a much more enjoyable game if you're passing it and you hold on to it than it is to spend the whole game giving it away, running around trying to get it back.
Is it a harder game to coach, would say, for you, for you as the manager? Or is that the mentality that sort of is in the club from underage as well? And I said, how can you cope with that, shall I say?
Well, I suppose, when we speak about developing players, we have 50 active coaches in the club at the moment. We have a coaching coordinator in Clive Slater, and you'll be familiar with Clive, yeah. Tom, who's doing an absolutely terrific job. And then, we've got Johnny Reedy, who's over our academy. We have Barry Murphy, who's heavily involved with a couple of different sides, including our junior side, and has a really good 2007 group coming through. I suppose the onus is on the coaches to coach the way the club would like, and we do have a coaching manual that mentions and that lays down the way we want to play. Now, at the end of the day, you can't do too much reaching into every age group and saying, you have to do this or you have to do that. Coaches will coach. But I think from the way the adult teams are playing, the young players can see the way you're expected to play. And there is a challenge involved in that, but it means that the more they do it at underage, the more they'll be ready to play at an adult level when they, graduate to that at 16 or 17.
And before you...
go ahead.
I'll just ask one question. Does that permeate specifically in the Premier? Is there a difference, we'll say, between the Premier and, we'll say, the lads playing in the third division? Is it a bit like that you're trying to coach this into everybody, but that it might be more beneficial maybe for the lads in the third, whereas in the Premier, because the grade is that bit higher, that a lot of the other clubs are probably aspiring to do the same? Or is the game that much different? The approach that clubs and other managers take to how the game is played, has it adapted? As I said, as the big Jack days of put them under pressure and hoof it up the pitch, I'd imagine that's probably gone for a lot of teams, is it? I suppose the way that some teams feel the only way they can compete with the avenues in their markets is to be very direct, and to be tight and defensive. And I suppose that's not something that we aspire to, And there are a number of clubs that are trying to play the game very constructively. And for me, in some ways, it's easier to do that in a third division than in a Premier division. If you've got a good bunch of young players, and all our B team players, pretty much, we have a few older lads in their 30s playing with the B team, but in general, it's more young lads, and we're trying to get them to play the very same way. And sometimes you have more time and more space to do that against teams that aren't quite as athletic than in the Premier division, where, it's very competitive and it's very quick. And if you take a second touch, then you're not going to get a third one. So I suppose that's the way we want our A and our B team to play. That's the way we want our underage teams to play. That's the way we're going.
But listen, it's a brilliant, I suppose, focus to have, and a philosophy as well. And all I can say is that having you in studio tonight, and I know you've got coaching to go to this evening, and we really appreciate you coming in. You've given us a fantastic insight to what Tulla is about, and we really, really appreciate it. So for our very, very first show on Scariff Bay Radio, thanks a million for joining us this evening. That's Mike Moloney, senior coach with Tulla United in the Premier League. Now, we're delighted to have Fergus Donovan on the phone to us this evening. He is the manager of Kilkishen Celtic, who are also in the Premier League this season. Fergus, thanks a million for joining us here on Scariff Bay Radio on our new soccer show. How are you doing?
Good now, Tom, yeah.
Brilliant. Listen, can you give us a little bit of a quick summary on the end of last season and how you made it into the Premier League?
We were in a 3-horse race for the first division last year with Shannon Pound B and Shannon Hibs. We were in the hunt to win it right up to the closing stages. We lost the way to Ennis Diamond If we'd have won that game and our remaining fixtures, we'd have won the league. But unfortunately, we lost that night. So we made up for the following Sunday. We had a good 3-1 win away to Connolly, which secured our promotion to the Premier Division for the first time in our history. So it was a great reward for the lads for a tough season, you know.
And I know from my own soccer with Mountshannon Celtic that you've always had a fantastic underage setup at Kilkishen. Even when you wouldn't have had a senior team that would have been in the Premier or First Division, the underage seemed to be, let's say, a key part of the club and its foundations. Is that the same today?
Yeah, the underage, it went for a while, but we started it now recently again. And we're delighted to have, we have 5 teams now this year, under 9s, 11s and 12s boys and under 10s and 11 girls, and hopefully grow now next year of more teams, you know. So there's some fantastic players coming through from the village. And
tell me, I mean, Kilkishen as a parish as such, do you draw your players from lots of different areas in East Clare or Ennis, or where does your cohort of your squad come from?
Mainly from Kilkishen and O'Callaghan's Mills. We have players from Broadford and Tulla joining us as well, but mainly from Kilkishen and O'Callaghan's Mills would be the main areas we get our players from, yeah. And
tell me, has it been a massive attraction for, let's say, new players to come and join you because of stepping up to the Premier?
Yeah, I suppose it would be. We've signed 2 new players now, Paul Toohey and Paddy Fitz, are two new players to come in, but we've also got a few more from the village to sign for us. So it's nice to be in the Premier Division. It's great to be there, really, you know, and it's a higher level, but it's definitely something we're looking forward to.
And what experience have the 2 new lads that you've signed got, let's say, when it comes to the Premier?
Paddy would have played for Mountshannon in the Premier. I know Paul would have played as well in the Premier before. And we've had Dennis Murphy who plays as well. Dennis would have played in the Premier with Tulla and Avenue in the past as well.
And Dennis, it's funny, I would have actually played against Dennis back in the day. He was a young lad, and I was an older player, and very competitive centre back.
Yeah, he's a fantastic player for us. Dennis rejoined us in 2017, and we've come from the 3rd division up to the 3rd division now in the last 3 promotions in 4 years, and Dennis has been a mainstay of the team with us. He's also assistant manager the last few years with me, so it's fantastic that we have him back.
No, great. Always was a great player. I mean, that's a fantastic rise to go through the divisions. And would you have most of the heart of the team still there that would have began in the 3rd division, or let's say have lads fallen away?
No, we'd have a good few of the team that say we won the 3rd division Dublin 2019. So you still have Stevie Donovan, Noel Nash, Christy Philpott, Conor Henry. Paul Murphy still with us, Dennis, obviously, John Hagan, just Mark Sparky Long as well. So we have a fair crew of lads from that time up, and then a lot more than joined, say, in the 2nd division, and they've been together since, we haven't lost too many in the 4 years.
And tell me, your ground at the time that I would have been more actively involved with Mountshannon, there was, I think you were in danger of losing the field that you were playing in at the time. Where do you play your football currently?
We played in our original pitch, which is Eva's, belongs to Liam and Liz McInerney. We're very grateful that they allow us to play there every year. We had moved up to Scariff for a number of years, and we're happy to be back where we are now. So we're back in the heart of the village for the last start of 2017 season. We got the pitch back up and going,
For you, and that's where your underage will be as well. I just want to bring Luke in now at this stage, just for 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, I suppose it's great to have, we'll say, East Clare teams competing highly in soccer, and to have another team in the Premier is a great achievement. And as I said, I know getting into the Premier this year, it's the first time achievement that for you. You would have, been around the 3rd and the 2nd and the 1st on occasions as well. And I suppose, are you looking to sort of try and develop, we'll say, from a facilities point of view, you have the underage structures that are there now, as you said, you have a lot more teams coming on board. I suppose we're just maybe trying to compare, we'll say, to the neighbours over in Tulla, and, they're on the go since 1970, and it's probably only in the last 5-6 years the the total fruits of what they have been doing for that period of time is coming to fruition, you know, and they're back in the Premier now as well. And I'm sure there'll be a few testy derbies and East Clare derbies coming up in the near future for us to look forward to, and we'll have to get a reporter or two down to them for him. But we'll say, what is, we'll say, you know, the strength of it's all voluntary. We all know that. Are you looking to maybe try and develop facilities down the line, or is that something that's not on the agenda at the minute?
Down the line, we would. Like, we're very happy where we are at the moment, and we also have the school Astro now is being developed into. It's actually making it bigger now this summer with floodlights, so that'll be an area where we can also train too, you know. So we're happy enough with the facilities at the moment, but we will, down the line, we'd have to look at it again, yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose actually having the Astro, I presume that's going to be beneficial, we'll say, all around, because it'll mean you have your younger players will be able to sort of play year round. You might be able to train year round as well. And I think, like most places now in East Clare, it's not like how things used to be years ago. There's a bit more sharing and caring, and that facilities are more open to people of different codes as well. So I presume you don't have too many issues from that point of view.
No, and once this Astro's expanding out, we've trained, there is no floodlights down there at the moment. The plan is to have floodlights in there next year, you know. So recently we've been training in Gorteen on the Astro over the winter months for the last, I suppose, 5 or 6 years now.
Okay, yeah.
It's funny, Fergus, speaking of rivalry, whenever there was a fixture, Mountshannon Celtic versus Tulla, it was always considered kind of a local derby, and we never really considered it because we always had a fantastic relationship with Tulla, and also proximity wise to Tulla, it wasn't like as if it was Scariff and Mountshannon, you know. There was a how do you say, there were always tough matches, but there was rarely a goal between us. Is it the same with Kilkishen because of your proximity?
Look, we'd always have a good relationship with Tulla, and also it's Bridge United. Like, you know, Tulla are 4 miles up one side, and Bridge United are 5 miles down the other side. So we're going to have 4 interesting derbies with them now this year in the league too.
Oh yeah, completely forgot about Bridge. So you're kind of piggy in the middle, so to speak. So
yeah. And Ryan Rovers would have been our derbies last year. I would say Ryan are only 5 miles over the road as well. Like, you know, they're in the first division now. But yeah, there's a few derbies all around us, like. And again, look, they're all competitive. They're all great clubs as well, like, and we enjoy playing them, like, and there's always fierce rivalry, but like at the end of the day, everyone wants to win, but you still remain good friends, you know.
Very good. I suppose squad-wise and numbers-wise, we'll say whereabouts, we'll say for your Premier team, we'll say what type of squad numbers, we'll say have you to pick from, we'll say, on a week-by-week basis. And I presume you probably have, we'll say, with the hurling side of things coming to a conclusion soon, you might have a few lads more available, we'll say, in the future as well.
Yeah, we've about 30 altogether signed. So weekday, like, you know, you're not going to have everybody there every week, you know what I mean? Like last year, we were kind of going to games with roughly between 17 and 20 every game, which was fantastic. And you need that, you know?
Yeah. And tell me, if you were going to put your money in a horse now, give us your 3 key players in your squad, 3 to 4 key players that you would write down week in, week out if you had them available.
Aidan Fall, Conor Henry, and Mark Pewter.
Aidan Fall. Where does Aidan play?
Aidan will play on left wing mainly, or central mid, you know, and Conor Henry then is a fantastic striker for us. Fantastic. Like, Conor's been with us now for a good number of years, and just a fantastic player.
Perfect. So you got Aidan Fall, Conor Henry, and who was our
Mark Pewter? Mark's our captain. He's actually joint captain this season with Paul Toohey. So Mark, who played left back for us, or left wing, another fantastic player. Mark had played for Bridge United for a number of years, and he came back to us in 2020. We came back, and he's been with us through the second division, the first division, now into the Premier Division. And another good player.
Well, listen, as I said,
we've not very good players, to be honest, Tom, but they'd be 3 that spring to mind straight away, you know.
Very good. Listen, as I said, just because I've asked for 3, as I said, you could ask for, if you had 6, you'd make. I could give
6. A lot more. There's a lot more. There's a fantastic squad there. In fairness, you know, the fantastic squad. So I'm looking forward.
It's great. I'm just thinking to have a squad of 30 signed up. That's fabulous, you know, for any team, I would say. In East Clare.
I mean, our boys in Mountshannon Celtic, we'd love to have 30 players signed up, and they don't have even close to that.
Yeah, you know, because it means that, you know, there are going to be weekends if there's lads in college, or, you know, lads are away, or different bits and pieces. But if you'd squads of up to 20 players a game, if you're playing on a Sunday, a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday, if you can have that number of players available to you, it obviously makes a big difference, from the point of view of, a game mightn't be going well and you sort of say, look, we need to change this up, and instead of having one lad on the sideline who sort of might be on a gammy ankle that you didn't want to really bring on, that you have those options there to bring subs on. But what would be your preferred sort of style of play that you're trying to encourage, we'll say, for the lads to play? Are you 4-4-2, 3-5-1, or some other combination that I haven't been kept up to date with?
We see sometimes vary, but 4-4-2 would be our preferred option. Like, we like to attack. Like, we would like to be sitting back and defending. Obviously, we will have times in this division with a couple of teams you might have to do that. Like, but overall, we like to go and attack teams, and go for the game ourselves. Like,
Fergus, I know you're caught for time, and I really appreciate you taking the call this evening. As I said, you were rang, this afternoon very late to be asked to come on the show tonight. So I really, really appreciate it. As I said, it's our first show with regards to Scariff Bay Radio and Clare Soccer that we're launching this weekend. So we really, really appreciate it. And listen, if you had one hope for the season ahead in the Premier, what would it be?
Our first goal is to maintain our status. Anything after that is a bonus, but our first year ever up there, we gladly take survival first off, and I said anything after that, we'll take it too.
Listen, that's it's fantastic you've joined us tonight. Thanks a million for that, and look, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and the best of luck with the match on Sunday.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Cheers,
Bye.
Fergus. Thanks a million.
Bye.
Like all good parties, we keep the best wine to last. And now in our presence we've got Oran, Scanlan and William Glass and Colm Kavanagh. Now I need to find out who does what at Mountshannon Celtic Football Club. William, are you the trainer, are you the manager, or another?
I'm just a player. I'm trying to be as much of a player as possible.
I believe you're a bit of a, how would you say, have you got a new coach on board this season as well, as long as
we do. We have a fella in from Limerick. He's familiar around the area because he works in the Adventure Centre with me down the road, Durgyle.
Okay.
Brian Crofton, he's a very good coach. He knows his stuff. He's trained Anacati in the past, and he's really brought a different atmosphere to the team, a more professional atmosphere, considering what we've come from.
Very good.
Over the last few years.
And tell me, Colm Kavanagh, you have been around Mountshannon Celtic for a long, long time. I know you right back to when you were a 17 or even a 16-year-old playing for Mountshannon. So you're back in the management team again here at Mountshannon, this time in the First Division.
First Division, yeah. We got relegated last year. So we're kind of where we're at. We're comfortable in the First Division, whereas we kind of weren't in the Premier League. Like, we weren't set for it yet. So this year, pre-season has been very good. So we're hoping to push on, get our hurlers back, and go for promotion. What do you think, William?
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely the goal anyways. But we'll take it game by game as it comes.
Well, you always have to have an aim. And I believe, William, you were playing in a foreign league last year and you've returned to the Clare League. Is that true?
Yeah.
But that's worth its weight in gold, because Oran Scanlan there, he knows how much dedication means to a club, and to have you back now is brilliant.
Oh yeah, well it's something I was kind of missing when I was playing in Limerick. I wasn't seeing my friends as much.
Okay.
And it was more of it's probably more serious than what I came from in Mountshannon, but there's definitely pros and cons to both, and it's great to be back with the lads I grew up playing football with.
And tell me, when you were playing in Limerick, were you playing up front or were you playing midfield? Where were you playing?
I was playing up front, I was playing in a front two.
Okay. And would you be hoping to kind of hit the heights of last year playing for Mountshannon this year in the First Division? Are you playing up front again? Did you start up front this year so far?
Yeah, I've started up front. We played a few Shield games. Like, we've done well as a team. We've created a nice few chances. It's just about, I suppose, capitalising and putting the ball in the back of the net. I think that's the main thing for us now. It's just kind of to get that rust away from last year.
Okay.
And just kind of bring, like I said, Brian's bringing in a more professional aspect to it. Like, me and Colm will tell you, like, we haven't seen Mountshannon being trained like this in years. So it's great to have that.
I'd say nearly since his father, because it's like
And tell me, have you lost an awful lot of players from last season, or have you gained players?
We've definitely gained players. Gained by a few, Thomas. Yeah, we did gain a nice few players.
It's funny, when we were speaking earlier on to Fergus, Donovan, he mentioned a familiar name in a player that had joined them, and Paddy Fitz was the name. And I said to myself, Paddy Fitz, how many Paddy Fitz could there be in East Clare? Is that the same Paddy Fitz now that played for Mountshannon Celtic?
I think he's on the books there. I don't.
I think that's. I think it's still up for debate. I don't think he is signed from. But
Right.
We'll see. He might. They might think he's signed, but I don't know. Paddy's a good lad. I don't think he'd change his colours that quick.
Okay, well
Paddy usually takes a few weeks off after hurling, so
right. So I see, kind of incubation period.
Yeah, we're hoping. Correct.
I see. And tell me something, when it comes to getting your best team out, let's say, would you have the same problem that Sam Allardyce had when he was over Limerick FC or Limerick City? He used to trawl the pubs.
That's before our time, Tom.
Well, he used to trawl the pubs of Limerick on a Saturday night to make sure his players weren't out and about and they'd be available for Sunday morning kickoff. I mean, it's a tough one because we are in a very rural setting, and as I said, lads will go out, and you know, is that discipline there?
There's a few scamps in it, you have the likes of Ronan Dooley. He's a bit of a bowl pup, but you have the likes of Dooley, Ben Harrington, the young lads. It's what you'd expect, but you kind of hope, like, as we get more professional, or not professional, but as we get more, you know, like as we get more
disciplined, really, in every aspect,
we'll hopefully get that out.
But it's way more disciplined now, because lads are looking after themselves way better than when we were playing, Tom.
Yeah, sure. Well, absolutely.
Do you know, like, you know yourself, some of us used to come from the pub nearly 2 hours before a match.
Well, it wasn't me or you now, Colm, can I just say?
No names mentioned. but
you know,
it's just gone so professional. Well, not professional, but it's so, lads are taking care of themselves way more, like, they're actually, you know, they're not doing that anymore, like.
Well, I mean, the thing is, one of the managers earlier on was saying how much you're as likely to see a guy walking the street of Tulla or Kilkishen with a bottle of water as you would with a bottle of a can or whatever, because again, the same thing applies. Lads are just looking after themselves much better and of course strength and conditioning is coming into it as well, so there's an overall, how do you say, there's an overall project going on with your own body and your training and all the bits and pieces, and youth isn't what it was, let's say, years ago. Tell me something about injuries and so forth. Do you find there's more injuries today than when we were playing back in the 90s and 2000s? There seems to be, I mean, you look at Eric Ten Hag with Manchester United, and William, we know you're a Manchester United fan, right? I know it's a bit of a long suffering for the last 10 years. Well, that's all I'm saying. But the thing is, Ten Hag is having an awful lot of issues with injuries. So is it a case that the way players are training today, their footwear, what's your own personal opinion on that compared to, because I can never remember too many serious injuries when we were playing back in the 90s.
I think there's nothing with the technology. I think people are just gone a bit more mollycoddled and soft, to be honest. I think that's the bottom line. I think everyone's more pampered now, and they're more likely to pull up with an injury and quit.
Yeah, well, it's a good point. I mean,
and that's just you You, me, no. Imagine telling an glass that you had a small little bit of a pain in the back of your leg.
No, I don't think it would be accepted.
Well,
no.
Nowadays it is. It is. It's just the way it is. You know, as William says, they're a small bit softer now. Like,
well, then this leads me into my next question.
Okay.
If you had 4 players out of your current squad with Mountshannon Celtic, that would be key players, right? They would be the spine of your team in so many different ways. We've asked this question to both Kilkishen and Tulla, and they've mentioned 3 to 4 players each. What are the 4 players that you would say, and that's not being disrespectful to any other player, including the gentleman that's sitting there in silence in the studio here, because he would obviously...
I think I'll answer that one. William, Oran, Michael Barrett.
So William Glass, Oran Scanlan,
Michael Barrett. Cunningham. If the 4 of them were missing, we'd have a serious problem.
And can I point out one thing? There doesn't seem to be a kind of a new name there from a point of view of, let's say, young players coming through. I'm not saying that William isn't young, but I'm just saying out of those 4, with some of the other teams, let's say, would have had established players, but also 1 or 2 18 or 19 year olds that would be key, but they're 18, 19.
But we've had them through the pre-season, but Hurling has taken them from us.
Okay.
They've been out of their minor championship and now they're training for under 21. Okay. So we really haven't got the benefit of our youths yet, like the likes of Michael Heffernan, Harry Borgenberger, Max Borgenberger. You know, we haven't got the max out of them yet. They're all 17, 18, 19. So we're hoping, they're playing other sports, like, so they're playing in hurling, and that comes first to them.
Okay, and when it comes to key positions, is there anywhere that you feel you're struggling with currently?
Well, we have Colm Moloney and Pádraig Brodie playing in the team, and they're 2 of our best players week in, week out, usually, like, bar none probably, like, and they're both, I think, Brodie must be at least 25. Brodie should be
they're
26.
They're over 20, just say that.
They're over 20 anyways. But those 2 lads are brilliant, and they're kind of like, Col's like an outstanding midfielder, and without him, like he said, he's just he was brought up hard. He's able to get stuck in. And he's not afraid of a challenge. Like, and it's something we would be missing if he was out of the match day squad.
Okay, and tell me, last season you missed probably one of Mountshannon's best goalkeepers in recent years, Andy O'Dwyer. Is any chance of Andy coming back into the fray this season?
No, I was talking to Andy. Andy's with St. Patrick's, is it?
St. Patrick's, he's playing a fairly high level of football
in Dublin. He got player of the season last year. So
excellent.
So they played in the FAI Cup this year.
Okay.
They lost. I forget who he said, but we're struggling with that position at the moment.
Okay.
You know, as in.
We've got a good young lad there.
Kyle is coming through, and we're going to work on him. And he's a bit shy at the moment, but we're going to get there with him. Do you know?
Brilliant. And tell me, if you were to say what your kind of aspirations are for the season ahead, is it mid-table? Is it going for the title? Is it developing the team? Is it, what's it going to be? Because like you were saying, it's all about a different style of training, a more serious style, a more, for want of a better word, professional style, but definitely to up the standard in the overall preparation.
I think the long-term goal is obviously to up the standard. That's obviously the long-term goal, but league position-wise, I think we'll just take it game by game. We'll see how we do. And like, we know when we go out, like, with our strongest squad, with all our boys back, we know we can beat anyone in the league, but it's just having that squad every week, you mightn't get the rub of the green,
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. The first division has always been dog eat dog.
It's a hard division.
It is a very hard division
because you've Newmarket B, you've Shannon B,
Avenue B,
and Avenue B. Well, no, Avenue B. I'm not sure about Avenue B, but them 2 teams are they're bringing class players into the division. Like, we've played Newmarket twice this year. They're a class team, like, so for a B team. So if you don't have a goal at the start of the year, you might as well. I'd be hoping we'd be in the running for promotion. Okay. But as William says, we'll take game by game, and we have to start our first. I think, going by the Master List, we're on probably next weekend against Rhine Rovers, I think, away. But look
So,
at
optimistic first 3 points of the season.
hopefully, yeah.
Excellent. Well, listen, with those encouraging words from manager Colm Kavanagh and first team coach and striker William Glass and Oran in company with us this evening. Thanks a million for joining us, lads, and we'll talk very soon.
Thank you very much.
Now we've got, how can I say, a legend joining us here, both in media and also in football knowledge, Mr. Jim Madden, former PRO of the Clare League and former chairman of the Clare League. Good evening, Jim. How are you doing?
Very well, Tom, and I'm delighted to be talking to the people up in East Clare and that you're going to do in a regular sports slot for Clare soccer as well. Very much appreciated, and it's something that I'm glad to see and delighted to see you doing that as well.
Well, do you know what? The dark side of the moon often, how do you say, has its moments. So that's where we're at now at the moment, do you see? So we can't all be, how do you say, be proud of the Cliffs of Moher and the Burren and all the bits and pieces. We have to bring it over to East Clare from time to time, and we kick a football over here, like you well know, Jim. And of course, we have a very established club in Tulla United with fantastic facilities. So I think we can play it with the big boys.
You can indeed, and I mean, Mountshannon have had a long career and history in the game as well, and you're now in the first division, but that's not a problem. The first division is extremely competitive, but it does allow the club to rebuild a bit, and hopefully we see you back in the top level. But basically, in the top half of the first division would be very good this season.
I think, Jim, I'll just put in the line there. I think Mountshannon are just taking a break and letting Kilkishen go up and sort of see what the bright lights are like up in the Premier. And we wish them and Tulla the very best in the league, we'll say, in the Premier for this year. But listen, we want to sort of start with a general chat and just talk about the state of affairs in Clare soccer and the league in general. And there's an issue in relation to sort of games taking place, and it's nothing to do with the actual teams or the players. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, we have a problem with the availability of referees at the moment, and as a result, you'll see from the league table that there's a lot of teams with only just one game played, which is very, very unusual when we're now approaching the middle of October, despite FAI games and all of that. At the minute, the fixture secretary, Dean Russell, he said he's only able to fix or appoint, I should say, referees to one game in each of the divisions, as well as the FAI and Munster games, which are ongoing. There's also some clubs now are looking for, say, for a game that might be extremely competitive, like this weekend, Bridge United are playing Avenue United in the Munster Junior Cup second round. And it appears that they're both of those clubs there felt that they would like to have a three-man team, which would be a referee and two assistants, and that's what they've got. Now, of course, that takes a couple of people out of the normal run of things that's happening. We do need the clubs to start getting involved and nominate candidates to become referees. And just to make it quite clear, referees in Clare soccer, they get a fee for every game, plus travelling expenses as well. And while there is often talk about the abuse and whatever that goes on, the FAI have now issued very clear guidelines, and that will be dealt with in a more professional status on this coming Monday night when we have a seminar in the West County when FAI people will be there. But talking to referees, they feel that refereeing two games on a Sunday is making the day very long from a family point of view. And an experienced referee suggested to me at the early part of this week that maybe we should look at the morning start to be a bit earlier, maybe 10:30, and then have the second game at maybe 1 o'clock, which would mean the referee would be on his way home by 3 p.m. and wouldn't lose all day Sunday with regard to family life and that kind of thing. I think that would be very acceptable to all clubs. There might be clubs that might be a little bit difficult on a Sunday morning, and the referee suggested that we could stick with 11 o'clock for that. because the referee would more than likely be only doing that game. Say if that was in Scariff or Kilrush, the places that are removed from Ennis, Shannon, 6 Mile Bridge and Newmarket.
Jim, can I just ask you, in relation to that, what is the selection numbers-wise of referees, we'll say, that the league would have to pull from, we'll say, over the course of a weekend if everyone was available?
Well, if everybody was available, we'd want to be well into the 15, 16 referees.
Okay, and we're nowhere
and
near that at the
we have
minute.
about 8 active referees on any given Sunday.
Okay, and then if somebody's on holidays or if they're on leave or
that's
if they're
right. Now this weekend there's a number of referees have weeks, and that has to be built in as well because the referees have families, they have family lives, they have jobs, and it is important that we respect that and that we make it that they are able to be flexible, and that has happened over the years, as Tom will well know. That we have always been flexible with referees. However, as was pointed out to me the other day, it's been quite a number of seasons since we've had any real influx of new referees. The clubs can complain all they like about, we don't have we having matches and that. If you're not having a match, it means that we don't have referees. And the clubs have a responsibility, in my opinion here, to nominate people to referee games, and the referees will be trained properly, and they will, as long as they fill in a proper match report, we will deal with any disciplinary issues. And that is very, very important that they know that they are covered. They also, as I said, they get a match fee. They don't have to wait for the end of the season or anything like that for it. They get it on the day, plus a travelling allowance as well. And I gather that may be looked at the minute because of rising costs.
Yeah, Jim, it's kind of, I suppose life has given us a perfect storm in lots of ways, in the sense that people are working probably longer. They're probably working at different hours. Their lifestyle has become, I suppose, different in the last maybe 5 to 10 years. Even with regards to COVID, things have probably changed. There's probably a value, let's say, at weekends when it comes to family life that wasn't there before, from a point of view of your Sundays, and the pressure that the male or female referee would come under from their partner or spouse, let's say, to do something with the family because they would be working on a Saturday, that more and more people are working on Saturdays. And the second thing is VAR and technology has stepped up so much when it's come to soccer, not in the completely uncontroversially based on what we saw last weekend with the Premier League over in England, but I don't know how attractive it is anymore to become a referee. It's a bit like the priesthood, you know. I mean, the priests were struggling a few years ago as well.
Careful now.
But no, in the sense that looking at alternatives, and I do agree with you that where you have a club and you have people that would be willing to go ahead and get trained up as referees, absolutely, definitely. But equally so, the level of respect shown to them by players and the line, both, let's say, the watching fan and also management, you know, has to be adhered to. And, you know, you're not going to have one situation progress without the other one.
No, there is no doubt that we had a discussion earlier on with somebody, and I mean, the thing that I think that is very, very important, first of all, players, I think anyway, management, they'd like to see more consistency across the divide, the referees, for want of a better word. Now, what I did suggest is that the referees probably need a bit more education in regard to how they referee the game, and that they have some set standards for how they referee. There's also a thing that I think that can be missing at the minute, is that respect is a two-way street. And in my book, that the referees have to respect the players, because the players are going out and doing it voluntary. they're training, they're putting in the effort, and I think that the referees shouldn't treat adult players or even youth players as if they're children and raising their voice or anything like that to them. So, as I did say earlier in the discussion, that the word respect, I think COVID is missing a little bit in Irish society, and maybe society everywhere, but we're only worried about society here in Ireland and in Clare. And basically, we have got to get back to the idea that both sides are respected and the respect for each other. That has to be the criteria that referees and players and management have to look at the thing. Everybody has a responsibility.
Jim, can I ask you, and not just maybe from a Clare point of view, I presume this could be an issue maybe in other counties and around the country as well, but what role do the FAI take in trying to be proactive in relation to looking to try and get people to, people that maybe just, they don't make it as a player or they're nearing the end of their career and sort of saying to them, look, you might have been involved in this, you've the best knowledge of the game, would you like to become a referee? Are there any decent courses out there, or are there any, you've referred to the fact that there is compensation available for anyone that sort of takes it up, so I suppose you could say, what's the difference between a referee and a player? Well, the player is doing it all voluntary, the ref would be sort of getting compensated to try and keep an eye on all the people that are doing voluntary, and that's probably how it should be. But is there anything, we'll say, at a national level that has been done?
There are courses held more on a regional basis to cut out travelling and that. Now, the problem it has been in the last couple of years with us in Clare has been that the number of people volunteering to take part in these courses has been very, very low. That means that it's very hard to bring somebody in to do a course if the number of candidates that are coming in is in very low single figures.
Well, Jim, could I just maybe make a sort of a stupid suggestion, as I'm prone to do? To have people that are coaching the club requires coaching courses to be done. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And every club is supposed to have a set number of people that have those courses done.
That is true as well. There is strict criteria now about managing players, and particularly with any kind of, if the players are youth players, as we would call them, under 18s.
Should
safety and Garda vetting and all of that.
Yeah.
Now,
I presume that's
now mandatory.
Yeah, that's taken a while to come in, Jim, and I'm sure there was a little bit of opposition to that coming up along the way. But surely should the next phase to it not be that each club has to try and put, or, we'll say that Clare Soccer has to put forward X number of people to be trained as referees?
Yes, and that's down to the clubs to nominate the people, because remember, the league itself cannot or doesn't have the whatever to go out and say to people, we want you to referee or apply. For instance, people just don't do that. So basically what it means is you need somebody, an ex-player at a club that might say, well, okay, I'll give it a couple of years. But that hasn't been happening in any great number, hasn't been happening at all, we might say, over the last number of years. We need to get back to that. Back in the day when Tom would have been playing, he would have known every referee. There would have been a lot of referees around, or a good number, and we would always have had a fairly full league programme on every weekend.
Yeah, but if you made it mandatory, Jim, that for, if you just said, for argument's sake, if you've 10 teams in the Premier, that you say between the Premier teams, they have to put 8 people forward between them to train as referees for for a period of time. Make it mandatory, because the way that you've referred to it, it's like, we'd all like to have refs and all the rest of it, but if there's nothing there to sort of, you have to have mandatory qualifications to be a coach. You have to have mandatory qualifications to be able to deal with underage people. The clubs now should there not be a responsibility put on them? Or Tom's probably looking at me here now with the dagger eye, and he's probably going to sort of give out to me for it. But should the clubs not be putting people forward and saying, right, we have, if we have 40 people, if we have 50 people in our club, that for every 50 people in a club, one has to be a qualified referee. Should that not be how it goes?
I feel, Tom, Luke, that basically I did submit a bit of a little piece to the papers this weekend, and the Champion used it. What it said was, due to the shortage of referees and requests to appoint 3 match officials for games, it is vital that clubs nominate candidates, either male or female, to take up refereeing.
Yeah, and
there are now strict rules in place to deal with abuse, and I also mentioned the fee per game and who they should contact. I feel that the league isn't strong enough in the criteria for being, say, in the Premier League or in the First Division, because I think that both of those are interlinked. The Premier, you get promoted from the First Division to the Premier League, you get relegated from the Premier League to the First Division, and I think the First and Second, the Premier and First Divisions should be linked with regard to the responsibility to nominate candidates for referees.
And you alluded there, Jim, to the fact that some clubs, due to the nature of the games that they're playing, have requested, we'll say, for linesmen and as well.
Yeah.
And I would say, hopefully down the line there'll be women as well. I hope that doesn't come across as two sexes. But surely that should be an avenue that, we'll say, the league and clubs should be looking at. That you may have people that would be involved, they mightn't be fully committed to maybe being the person in the middle, but that they'd sort of say, yeah, I'd run the line. And, I'd be prepared to run the line, get a bit of training, exactly in how it does.
Yeah.
And then that they could supplement the people that will say, if there is a big game or a derby on, and that you have the main person in the middle is the main ref, and then that they'd have a good level of people on the line, rather than having to pluck someone out of the crowd. And that would mean that the people on the line that would previously have been reffing games would be available to go back and ref their games.
Well, I mean, Luke, that's a very sensible proposal, but you have this thing about we have to. I mean, there's no doubt that we will have to come up with some solution, and that could be one way of doing it. In that, say, for instance, but can you imagine that if that game next Sunday that has the 3-man, the Bridge and Avenue, if both of those clubs nominated linesmen, and there was any contentious decision, and God knows there'll be plenty, that if the linesman on one side, that unfortunately was where the contention was, and he was, say, from the Bridge or Avenue, the man will, or the person will get it on the neck. And that's not what you want people to be exposed to. It would be, if there was, say, for instance, that match, and you had somebody from Tulla or Kilkishen that were capable of doing the job, well, then they could travel into the Bridge, get some travelling expenses, and do the line for the official referee.
Jim, is this something that other counties are facing as well, or is it just Clare?
No, it's not. It's not only Clare. There's serious issues facing the junior game across the board. Some of it is to do with clubs that are struggling to feed teams now. A lot of it is due to the fact that there is so many alternatives there for players, and the fact that Gaelic Games is now virtually 12 months of the year.
Yeah, that certainly has had an impact. Tell me, Jim, will you give us a quick summary of the Premier League, First Division, and let's say Second and Third, of the knowledge that you have in relation to the start of the season? And speaking of clubs, we believe Cool got a little bit of, a hiding against, was it Newmarket or Avenue United, possibly? Last Sunday. Mountshannon had the same thing, in last year's Premier League. Is there a massive divide now between the top 2 or 3 and the rest?
There is indeed. I mean, if I'm looking at the Premier League here, Avenue now are top, but they have played 4 games. David Russell is very proactive in making sure they play a game every weekend. Newmarket Celtic have only played 1, and they have another game they got to walk over, which is their fault. They have 6 points. Shannon Town then have only played 1 game, and they have 3 points from that. Lifford are in the same boat with 1. Kilkishen have played 2 and have 1 point. Kilrush Rangers have played 2 and have a point. And then Tulla, Bridge United and Cool are all pointless. The first division then is headed by Newmarket Celtic B, but they have just played 1 game and they have 3 points. They won that. Ennisdons are in the same boat, and Shannon Olympic have also played only 1. All 3 of those. They're followed then by Bunratty, Inch, Moher, Sporting Ennisdiamond and Ryan Rovers, and Shannon Town B and Mountshannon, who all are pointless. Now, the fact that they have only played really 1 game each is an indictment of the problem at the position at the moment. You remember from your time that clubs at this stage of the season would at least have played 3, if not 4 league matches, plus their Munster Junior or FAI commitments. This really does make it difficult, I think anyway, for the finishing of the season and around Christmas when clubs want a bit of time off as well. The second division is much the same. All the teams there have either played 1, and Hermitage have played 2, and that's the size of it. And then there's a club, Manor Celtic, have played none. The third division, Callan from up in North Clare and Mullock have played 2. They have 6 points. Shannon Olympic B have only played 1, and they have won of that as well. And Shannon Town C have 3 points from 1 game, and Tulla B are in the same boat from 2 games. So the number of games played is very, very low for the number of teams that we have spread across the county.
And tell me, was did they have a League Cup prior to the league matches?
They did have
starting?
a League Cup. Now, the League Cup is fine for the first and second and third division, but unfortunately there was a vote taken at an EGM which should never have been called to decide it a week before the league was due to start, that they would bring in the League Cup. All the clubs had a vote in it, and it only was for the Premier, and some of the Premier teams weren't able to get a postponement so they could speak to their committees. As a result, they were forced into having to play for the Hugh Kelly Cup. I thought it was a dreadful lack of respect to the Hugh Kelly tournament, considering what Hugh Kelly has done for Clare soccer when he was a manager at Bunratty, he was a manager at Avenue, and he managed Clare to win their first ever Oscar trainer, if you remember, down in Ballycasey.
I do. I remember Hugh. Yeah.
I found anyway, and Hugh and myself were very good friends. I acted as kind of liaison for him. My job, as he said, was to look after food, the jerseys and buses, and I did that for a couple of years, and then we won the Oscar trainer, which was an absolutely brilliant day. And we've won it twice since under Donny Garrahy, who has taken over as manager again. But it was a different competition later years, because in the time that Hugh won it, we had to play something like 8 games.
And on reflection, Jim, was that final played in the Newtown grounds in Shannon at the time?
It was, yes.
That's right.
And that pitch is now the schoolboys league were offered that. The team that had that at the time was Newtown FC, who you would have known.
That's right.
They folded when they amalgamated with Hibs and Park Rangers to play in Limerick. As a result, the pitch was allowed go derelict. It was offered to the schoolboys league and the junior league at a very low fee to take on the lease. Both of them refused it, mainly motivated by clubs in Ennis who didn't want to travel to Shannon. And now it's the home of Clare Cricket.
Wow. Well, there's something you don't find
out. And I was there for the first game because I was very involved with Newtown at the beginning when they were allocated this pitch. You remember there was good dressing rooms there back in the day. There was a fine pitch, well fenced in. I could not believe that the clubs in Ennis, the bulk of whom depend on local authority pitches other than Avenue and Lifford, voted against taking over the Ballycasey facility.
Yeah, no, an absolute travesty. I remember playing on the pitch. Actually, there was several pitches in that
there
space.
There were 3 pitches there.
There were several pitches, and I remember playing against Mr. Rock as well. God, he's long departed us, but he was 51 and he was playing fullback for Newtown, I think it was at the time, Newtown B at the time.
That's
and he
right.
was fullback.
And of course there was other people as well, Tommy McDade and
that's right.
all of those guys. It was a club that had a colourful history, successful history, but they got this figari that they wanted to move into Limerick, and then when the league refused to give them permission to move to Limerick, they decided to amalgamate with Park Rangers, who were already in Limerick, and out of that then became a club called Shannon Hibs, which today has no adult team.
And if recollection serves me right, there was a notorious chairman on the Clare League at the time. Was it Jim Madden that was the chairman of the Clare League around that time?
Yes, I was, and I tell you now, I fought tooth and nail to keep Newtown in Clare.
I remember.
I travelled to Dublin umpteen times to, that time the FAI's head office was in Square, I think, was it? And I also went to down to Turner's Cross in Cork with the Munster Football Association. Eventually, I got overruled.
That's right. No, I remember it well, Jim. I remember it well. Now,
Jim, I suppose we should say Clare Soccer's loss is Clare's cricket's gain.
Well, it is indeed, and there is a lot of people who would around Shannon and other who feel very sad because Ballycasey was synonymous with Clare Soccer for a long number of years. On top of winning the Oscar trainer there, the club Newtown had built dressing rooms. They fenced in the pitch. I'd say that it was one of the very early pitches in the county that was enclosed.
Yeah, they were probably ahead of their time, Jim. That's probably part of the problem.
There were great people there. I mean, Tom was talking about Jimmy Rocks. There was Brendan Wall, who put in a lot of work. There was Tommy Carr, who was a legendary groundsman there at that time. There was another man, I can't think of his name, and the amount of time and hours they put into it, and the pride they took in making sure that everything was immaculate there. I remember when we won the final, the Dublin team that came down couldn't leave the facilities that were there, changing room-wise. The pitch was fenced in, and the general ambience was very, very good indeed.
And sure, and no better result than to send the Dubs home packing with a loss in their back pocket.
They were incredibly sporting, and I remember well that that night after winning the game, we were using the Clare Inn, which they called, I don't know what it's called now. It's the hotel, and it was still there, and the Inn of Poland, I think it's called now. And we had our meal there and they stayed, and by God, they stayed late. We partied until late.
And you know what? And Jim, I was struggling for a name to call this part of the show, and I had written down here. I put down Jim Madden's crack, and there, and there you are. You're talking about partying all night long up at the Clare Inn. So you never let us down.
No, I mean, you when you win something, and the Oscar trainer was a legendary trophy and still is, though it doesn't have the same cachet as it had then. For the first time in Clare, it's like Newmarket last season winning the FAI. You have got to celebrate these massive occasions, and we did celebrate it.
No, absolutely. I totally agree, because as I said, we don't know when the next one is going to come around. And
no, you don't.
Hopefully this weekend the Irish rugby team will do us proud as well over against Scotland.
We're not talking about rugby.
I know, but
Tom, we're talking about soccer.
You know, about
yeah, well, I think Tom, you're right. I mean, the country has got behind the soccer team. They've got behind the rugby team. They got behind the ladies team. when they went to the World Cup and gave a great performance. I wasn't happy about what some of the comments made by some of the team about Vera Pauw, which I thought were very deserved. Right, she was extremely conservative in how she liked the game to be played. Maybe she was a little bit old-fashioned, but for players to say that they got to the World Cup in spite of her, I think was totally disrespectful.
And, you know, hopefully in the years to come, we'll have a few ladies in the Clare panel, or how do you say, from Clare, going on to represent Ireland, let's say, in the ladies' team. They've had a very, very good start to the new campaign under, is it Miss Gleeson? And I think she's the director of football, is it, with the ladies in the FAI. But we're hoping to, next time we have our show, to include a lot of ladies soccer as well in the Clare district. So that'll be our next bit of an adventure. But Jim, to conclude our section tonight, what would you say your hopes are leading up to Christmas in relation to the different teams in the league? Do you reckon we're going to really, really struggle now at this stage to get games off the ground?
Well, nationally and in the FAI Junior Cup and in the Munster Junior, I think that the two top teams, Avenue and Newmarket, and to a lesser extent Shannon, are quite competitive. And both of the teams, the three teams, they are working very, very hard indeed. Of the three, I would imagine that Newmarket and Avenue are going to be very competitive and will get to the knockout stages of both of those competitions. The word is that in Limerick they were a bit miffed to see Newmarket going into Jackman Park and winning the FAI Junior Cup. They beat St. Michael's in that, which was a brilliant occasion, a big crowd, great atmosphere. Unfortunately, Newmarket lost the Munster Junior final to regional inside at Jackman Park as well. There was a big crowd there. My own feeling is, and I have said this to some Newmarket people, I think after the FAI, they took their eye off the ball a little bit, because their main driving force after winning the FAI was to get back to winning the Premier League and unseating Avenue, who had beaten them the year before. And for some reason, they felt that winning the Premier League, which they did do, was of more importance than winning the Munster Junior Cup. And I do think that that was maybe getting their priorities a little bit wrong. Newmarket, for their part, have also won the Tom Hand Cup when they beat the Cork intermediate champions down there. In Ballingarry, they won there on in extra time, if I remember rightly, some weeks back. They will now be playing in the Munster Champions League thing against the league winners from the other comp leagues. And they're still, as I said, in the Munster Junior. So I think we have a lot of soccer still to look forward to. And on the Wednesday, the 18th, the Clare Oscar Traynor team are playing Limerick in Jackman Park at 8 o'clock on the Wednesday night, the 18th.
Okay, some good local soccer, at least across to Limerick, to look forward to at a very, very good level. Luke is going to come into you one last time, Jim, before we finish up.
I said we're heading for injury time now, Jim, in this slot. You alluded to earlier Callan United, new team in the league this year?
Yes, indeed. As I said, they're playing their games out of Mullagh, so they must be from up around there. They're probably pulling their players from Kilmurry Bricken, Mullagh, and other maybe Milltown, Malbay, Milltown as well.
Okay.
So they would have guys capable of playing football and physically very strong, because remember, these club teams would have very strong GAA presence. Admittedly, Kilmurry Bricken were dumped out of the championship by Cratloe by a point, and there is no doubt, and I know some of the Kilmurry people, they were not happy campers at the end of that game.
No, but I presume it meant they got back to the soccer a bit quicker than usual, Jim. I suppose.
Well, as you know, Luke, there's never a cloud that doesn't have a silver lining.
Exactly. Listen, I just want to make one observation just in relation to the Premier. You alluded to earlier there that I just would say results in general. There have been some very bad beatings that I don't think do any good for any clubs.
No, they don't.
Cool, I just know, we'll say in a preview of the season, I noted that Cool have lost a number of players. If the first result or two of the season are anything to go by, do you think are they going to struggle this year?
They will struggle, there is no doubt, and it's going to take serious determination by the management and the players to see out the season. Mountshannon did it last year, they struggled, but they kept at it, and you have to admire that, which I do as well. I was delighted at the end of the season that the three clubs that came up survived in the Premier League. Kilrush, who are doing great work back there. Michael Clare is the manager there, and he has a very good fit. Now, he has done something that wasn't being done by a lot of the clubs outside of the top couple. He employed a strength and conditioning coach. Now, the one position he can't fill, and I know Mike very well, he can't get a goalkeeper. But they won above in Mountshannon last week. He said it was a good game, and they're playing Shannon Town B this week. The other teams that I was delighted to see, I'm delighted to see Tulla, because I think Tulla can develop, and if they concentrate on soccer, consolidate their position in the top level.
Yeah, and as I said, being an East Clare team, we wish them the very best of luck. And I suppose Kilkishen sort of reaching the heady heights of the Premier this year, and hopefully it goes well for them.
It's their first time being promoted, and they've put in a lot of work. Now, they haven't played very many games, as we pointed out, but I think that basically they feel that now that there is very little distractions in the Kilkishen area for the players, that they will have a full squad available to them. And when they have a full squad and their home pitch, they do make it very difficult to beat them.
A bit like Selhurst Park, Jim, for my poor, how would you say, fast, I don't know what you would call it, imploding Manchester United, going to all these different little places that they're going to find games very, very hard this season.
I'm not a big Man United fan, I'd be more Arsenal, but the game I really enjoyed in the last week or two, I really did enjoy the Newcastle Paris Saint-Germain Champions League match.
I only got the result.
The goals were scored, were cracking goals, and to have that centre half come up and really put the icing on the cake with the fourth goal from well outside the area to slam it past a very, very good keeper, not giving him a chance. And the other thing that I was delighted about was Dan Burton, who is their big local guy, 6'4" or 5", getting a goal as well. Lovely to see local guys staying at the top clubs like Newcastle. And I think that the manager there deserves incredible credit. He kept Bournemouth in the top league for 10 years, and his biggest crowd and the maximum crowd they could have down at that stadium was 10,000. Can you imagine being able to keep a team like that competitive when you're up against teams that have 50,000, which Newcastle would have, and Man United would have, and Arsenal, and the resources that they have, and to be able to do it? I think he deserves massive credit as well.
He certainly does, and I think you put your finger on it by keeping it local, Jim, and that's what we're trying to do here on Scariff Bay Radio. And I'd like to thank you sincerely for joining us tonight. I know it was at short notice, and as I said, you're as ever insightful in all your knowledge of football, and it's brilliant having you on board here for this season. And thanks a million again, Jim Madden.
Tom, Luke, I've enjoyed it, and I always enjoy chatting to you guys, and you need never worry if you ring me and I'm around, we can always talk about soccer.
The bat signal will be sent once a month, Jim. You have been warned.
Jim Madden, thanks a million for joining us tonight here on our show. Thanks a million.
Come on, Father Cullen, get your arse in gear. Father Whelan, come on. You can move faster than that. Get into it. For Mr. Todd from there, you need shooting.
I'm very tired. I'm 85.
Good God, that's an awful defeatist attitude, Father Cullen. I'm holding you back for extra training. You'll stay here until 7. Do 15 laps of the pitch.
But
off you go.
God
almighty, Mrs. Doyle. How could you find this type of thing interesting?
That's what I thought. Sit down. But look at this.
Close him down! Close him down!
Sensini's got an open goal. If we don't do something soon, he's going to score within a matter of minutes. Oh, where did he come from? Someone's going to have to get tighter on the Italian.
Go wide! Go wide!
You're not singing! You're not singing! You're not singing anymore! You're not
He sent the keeper the wrong way.
Open goal! Go on, Father Cullen!
Yes!
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good, though.
It could have been a lot better.
I didn't really like it.
It was pretty terrible.
It was bad.
It was awful.
It was terrible.
Get him away!
Hey, boo!
Boo!